Hi, everyone. Christopher Thomas with inCity Magazine. And thank you for joining us back again for a wonderful show that we have in store for you. And it's pretty exciting. People have been talking about it and about entrepreneurship, COVID, fitness, and sex, and how it all affects entrepreneurship. So, this today, we have Dr. Amanda Armstrong. Dr. Amanda,
Hello.
how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on today, Chris. I appreciate it.
Hey, you're welcome. Thank you for making some time out in your schedule,
Yes.
and I know your patients are rely on you quite often. So thank you for carving out some time for us. We're going to jump right
Mhm.
on in, Dr. Armstrong. Um, as many of as our viewers know, and I think I've shared with you a while back that I have had COVID, twice. First time was in 2021, and the second time, which was a much milder case of it, in 2022. Almost a year later. And it really got me to thinking, about as being an entrepreneur, about COVID and how I felt, you know, when I felt physically, I did not feel so good. But then when I got across to that physically feeling well, I had this whole other side that I had to battle and tackle, which was more emotional and mental, as well. And it got me thinking, how it affected me as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as well. And it got me thinking about other business owners and entrepreneurs as well. So, you know, as being entrepreneurs, many did not have the time to be able to prepare for such an unprecedented disruption, which would have followed, the COVID pandemic. And even today, being 3 years into COVID, many entrepreneurs are trying their best to adjust. But what advice would you give to entrepreneurs on how to mentally balance or live with that disruption?
Yeah. I think that's a good question. And I know this is something that we've kind of spoken about, not necessarily in the context of COVID, but just in general, the mindset that is needed to go into being an entrepreneur. Kind of shifting from that employee to the employer mindset, I think builds a level of resilience in those of us that are out there and that are taking on these roles. But as you stated, now year three of going into COVID, I think a lot of people are kind of exhausted. What I find in talking to a lot of my clients, a lot of them who are business owners, is that most of them are in survival mode. They tend to kind of just go, 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 push, push, push. But something that I'm finding is that a lot of folks are just burning out right now. They're tired, they're exhausted. Like you said, this is something that was a huge life stressor that none of us prepared for, none of us could have prepared for. So, something that I do, I encourage everyone, entrepreneur or not, is to engage in self care. And I know that's been a buzzword. Everybody's been talking about that the entire time of COVID, self care, self care. But the challenge I usually give people, especially my clients, is to engage in self care every day. Because what happens is once we get into survival mode, that stress response goes up and we're kind of in that fight, flight, or freeze response. Having self care daily, even if it's, I tell folks, 3 to 5 minutes of your day. I like pimple popping videos. So I'll pull up a pimple video on YouTube or just meditating, taking a nap, going to go get something for lunch, just taking time out to breathe. It's huge. It gives you a mental reset just to give your brain a chance to have a break. And what that does is it begins to train us to take some time, to take things a little bit slowly. It begins to retrain the brain where it has a chance to rest. And it's not always just going, going, going. So that's something I've seen, especially mental resilience, that has been important over the course of COVID. A lot of us have had to sit with ourselves, to sit in isolation, especially during COVID. and that ability to take care of ourselves and to build us up and to give our brains just a chance to have a break has been huge. A lot of people say, I don't have time. I don't have time. 3 to 5 minutes. That's more than enough time. And I say that we're more than worthy of that time.
Wow. Wow. You said a lot right there. Everything from uh, self care daily,
Mhm.
and there was a term that you mentioned before early on, and I've heard that before, which is survival mode. I mean, I think that that will be a talking. We may have to have you on again just to talk about that by itself. You know, that's a show probably by itself. You know, as well.
Mhm.
So thank you for those tips. What are you kind of tapped into it? You know, as an
Mhm.
entrepreneur, you mentioned 3 to 5 minutes a day. You know, what are some other examples of some possible self care? You talked about it, maybe going to get some lunch, or maybe
Mhm.
or some other activity. What else could someone do to kind of give some people some creative ideas about 3 to 5 minute self care on a daily basis?
Thank you for asking that. And that's honestly a question I get asked a lot by my clients. They're like, well, I do self care. And honestly, to me, it's whatever works best for you. To me, it's something that is personalized. Someone's idea of self-care may be going, taking them a quick nap. Someone else's idea might be going and I don't know, organizing products or whatever it might be. So I encourage people to get creative, even if it's something that they're doing every day, going and sit in their car or I don't know, I like cupcakes. So going to get a cupcake, whatever that I call them cupcake moments is for them in their lives. That's what I encourage people to do. There is no, to me, and this is my personal opinion, set way to engage in self care. I think it is whatever that person sees as their time to recharge. I always tell people, we have cell phones, we have laptops. Like right before this started, I saw my laptop was about to die. I ran and I got a charger to plug it in. We do that with our cars. We put gas in them. We charge our cell phones. We charge everything else up. So I think we have to be just as mindful of ourselves. And even if we see, hey, today I'm at 5%, I know I just need to plug in just a little bit just to get myself back up to whatever that level is that we know is optimal for us. So we know that we can push through. To me, that's what self care is. And that's what it looks like. Again, it's
Wow.
individualized and it's something no, I talk with my clients individually and we pull out things they didn't even think of. But I'm like, that is your time. You're worth that 3 to 5 minutes a day. And honestly, that 3 to 5 tends to, they're like, oh, I spent 15 or 20. But that's the idea is that if you can do that, then you can add in five. Then you can get that up to 10, 20. It grows. But we have to start small.
Wow. Wow. That is so wonderful point. Never thought about many of those things in from
Mhm.
that point of view. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm sure that all of our entrepreneur and anyone watching, it's not only for entrepreneurs. I mean, even though this particular show is geared towards the entrepreneur,
Mhm.
um, anyone can benefit, from this. And who doesn't like a good cupcake, So who would really think that a cupcake, going to get a cupcake, could be self care? But it
That's
is.
part of my personal plan. It's my
Yeah,
cupcake day.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yes.
So, I was reading an article a while back in the Entrepreneur magazine, and it stated that exercising is an entrepreneur's best competitive advantage. How true is that, and why?
Hmm. I think that goes back to kind of what I was talking about earlier, being in survival mode. And if we would look at it from a biological perspective, we have a stress hormone called cortisol. That's kind of, I tell people, is when the bear walks in the room, what do you do? That's when we go into that stress response, fight, flight, or freeze. And what happens is over time, cortisol builds up in high levels, the higher the stress is in our lives. What exercise does is almost well, not almost, it does. It counteracts that level of cortisol to where we are able to release those endorphins. Those are endogenous morphine, is what that stands for. And it gives us this state of calm and a state of relaxation, almost puts you in like a zen like state. And why this is important, especially for entrepreneurs, is guess what? It helps with your concentration. It helps with your ability to kind of multitask and organize. And it also helps with just that mental clarity, and it improves sleep. So if you're out there, you're working all day long, you have all these different things coming at you, you are your company and your brand. Who would not want to have those areas increase in their life? So yes, physically, we start to look better, we start to feel good and all, but also for us again, mentally, where it's happening to that clarity. It kind of helps us to relieve that stress. It reduces that stress response. Because again, if we're in that stress response where we're waiting for the shoe to drop or waiting for that bear, so to speak, to walk into the room, nothing else is going in. We start to forget things. We start to kind of fall apart or feel like we're not at our best. And that exercise helps to mediate those feelings. It helps to reduce that stress response and give us, again, another break so that we are able to rest more. When we improve our sleep, we can improve mentally.
Wow, thank you. You
Hmm.
know, I found out about myself that I cannot go past 3 days without some form of exercise. And if it's going over 3 days, then, you know, my mind is not clicking right. You know, it's not firing right.
Hmm.
And almost getting to a point of, higher anxiety, as well. My
Yes.
creativity is off,
Hmm.
anxiety increases, I'm just not myself. And I unintentionally found that out about myself, while sick, some years ago. And then, once I did start back working out, I'm like, I immediately, almost, you know, 2, 3 minutes within the workout, started feeling the reverse. And I said, wow, my body has gotten addicted to working out, to exercise. And it's a wonderful feeling. So thank you for
Yes.
explaining that to us. Exercise not only is affecting our health, um, but it sounds like that it can also affect our business and relationships. Can you
Right.
explain that part to us?
Yes. It's just kind of like you were just stating, when we have that physical activity going on, it's that mind body connection. And, before I went into kind of entrepreneurship, I worked um, with a government agency in primary care where my job was specifically to be embedded in primary care teams where I worked with doctors, nurses, just that person's whole healthcare team, because what they found out was that many of the people that were coming in had a lot of mental health concerns. And then people that had mental health concerns had health issues. So there's a strong link between the physical aspect and the mental aspect. So when we're looking at that then from an entrepreneur's perspective, um, I think it's important for us to realize that what we call in therapy behavioral activation, that's the first thing we do when someone comes in with depression or anxiety. We want to get them up and get them moving. Why? And like you said, it reduces kind of that sluggish feeling, it reduces the anxiety. And what happens is that when you feel better, then you start to do better. We get out, we're more active, we're more social with people. Even going out, if it's at the gym or going out walking, we're just there with other people and interacting in our own ways. As humans, we're not meant to kind of be by ourselves or on an island. We are social by nature. So there again, it's important for us to get out, to be active and all. We get those endorphins going. We get that, what do they call, the runner's high? Like you said, you kind of feel good within that first few minutes because your body's releasing these chemicals and it's like, hey, this is what I needed. It's kind of giving you that internal I guess cheerleader that helps to get you going, get you flowing and keep you on track. And for me, that's where exercise for an entrepreneur is a highly important thing. It also teaches discipline to me. I think if you're getting up, if you're committing yourself to a routine, again, that's something that transitions over into business where you might not want to do it, but you're doing this because you know that the benefits is greater than that 5 seconds of sitting there saying, oh my goodness, I don't want it today. So to me, on all levels, it's important because yes, physically again, we're looking better, we're feeling better, clothes are fitting better. That increases that self-esteem, but also we're up, we're active, we're out, we're meeting people, and we're building discipline, which is very, very important in our roles as entrepreneurs.
Outstanding, outstanding. So that is that sounds like that's what's happening, and why it is so important that especially, fitness and exercise is good for everyone. Um, but as an entrepreneur, there's certain levels of stress that comes with entrepreneurship, and that's a good release, from that. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yes,
We're
I wanted
down
to
to
mention too, even with that level, I know I mentioned sleep earlier, but when you exercise, then sleep is also improved too. So again, that helps with cognitive functioning. You're a lot more clear. You're a lot able to better organize and kind of do the things that needs to be done. And what happens is, I tell people sleep deprivation is used as a method in certain institutions for a reason because it throws folks off completely with their mental faculties. But what happens is improved sleep can improve those mental issues that most people might have with like depression or anxiety. Or it can help reduce the risk for those people who do not have any mental health disorders because less sleep equals a greater chance of developing, one of those disorders, according to research. So I just
wow,
want to
wow,
mention that too.
yeah.
So
Thank
that's
you for
another
sharing
area
this.
where exercise is definitely helpful.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Mhm.
Um, Another one of my favorite, business magazines is Fast Company magazine, and it published an article with this statement here, and I quote: "The disappointing effect entrepreneurship has on your sex life." And
Mhm.
there, the statement is that sex life holds the key to your breakthrough in business. So the question is, how does sex impact brain activity?
Yeah. Good question. I know a lot of people are probably going to take notes on this, so
Yeah.
they're ready for a little, I guess, like biological bases of behavior. But our brain is comprised of several neurotransmitters, and when we're looking at sex, it releases dopamine and serotonin. So there's a few others, but dopamine and serotonin are two of the main ones, and those are the ones that kind of make us feel good. They give us kind of that high feeling and that happy feeling. They're not only released during sex, but they're released, like, say, if you're eating your favorite meal or you're around someone that you care about. But those are the chemicals our brain emits to be like, huh, I like this. This is something that's pleasurable. Again, if we're looking at now the, I guess, brain chemistry of it, and how that's impacting our body, we're reducing that stress hormone, the cortisol again. We're reducing stress. We're reducing that anxiety. A lot of those worries, they're going down. What also happens is when we reduce the stress response, we're no longer going to have headaches, stomach aches, diarrhea. Some people have itching skin, blurred vision. All of those come from symptoms of high stress or high levels of anxiety. I was looking at an article a little while ago that was saying having sex at least once or twice a week reduces, by 30%, a lot of these different problems that we have and also boosts immunoglobulin, which helps with our immune system. So, sex can also release these chemicals too that are helping your body to repair itself and helping to keep you healthy. So,
Wow. Wow.
uh,
Thank you for sharing
yeah.
that with us. So, I guess, you know, it, sex does help improve your entrepreneurial self, as well. So, I guess making time for sex, is incredibly important. And then also exercise is important. And then, which all helps us to be able to cope with the disruption that
Mhm.
we have encountered as a result of COVID and any of the other, pandemics or stress related activities that may present us in life, period, as well.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to mention before we close out, Dr. Armstrong?
Nothing that I can think of, like you were saying. I think it's just important looking at these three. I don't think most people would relate those together, but as we see, they're important. If we're looking at the stress and the level of stress that's come up during this pandemic, and now we have another disease that has popped up, and we're looking at self care, which exercise and sex can fall into those. I think just having a healthy lifestyle within all of those categories is very important, and learning how to cope and learning what our limits are, and just saying, hey, it's okay, I'm human. It's all right for me to take a step back if I need to. But again, having that discipline to know what those goals are and continue to strive and push forward.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Armstrong. And before we close out, how can our viewers contact you? Do you have a website where you can send them to?
Yes, I do
Or what
have a
information would you
website.
like to share?
So if someone were interested in reaching out to me, I could be reached via email. That is info@avondaleassoc.com. And that's Avondale, AV as in van, OND as in Dale, ALEASSOC.com. And my website is the same. It's www.avondaleassoc.com.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Yes.
Amanda Armstrong.
Thank you
We
for having me,
appreciate.
Chris.
Oh, you're welcome. It's such a pleasure. Thank you for making some time. And thank you to our viewers for tuning in to this segment of inCity Magazine. We appreciate you. We'll see you back soon.